Hi everyone, thank you for the 15 days of SQL challenge. Congratulations, today you'll be completing the 50%, that is the halfway mark for this challenge. I am so proud of you for showing up once again because that is half the job done. And today we'll be learning about SQL Union. Together in a vertical fashion. Now what we'll learn is joins, how you combine tables vertically. So like 3 or 4 rows or whatever you have in one table on top of the next table. So now it happens in a horizontal fashion when you have joins because both of your rows are getting together left or right sideways. But when you have union, you have on top of each other, so or either top or bottom. That's how the connection between the two tables happen. If you've not checked out the 15 Days of SQL series yet, I would recommend there's a playlist on my channel and you should check it out. It's beginner friendly content which would guide you through all of the basics, kind of the intermediate stuff required to start your SQL journey. And then if you practice enough, you'd be able to be interview ready. So let's get started then. If any one of you can let me know that the audio, video, everything is proper, we'll get started. I hope it is. I wouldn't want you to suffer throughout this 30 minutes. I will share the link of my tutorial which I'll be following. I'll be following a few more things and I hope you can access the link. I'd recommend again not just look at it as a theory lecture, but get hands-on with whatever content you are being presented with. Let's get started with what union is, what it does. So now, remember how you for joins. So in this particular lecture, I'd be comparing and contrasting a lot with joins because joins and unions are often confused because join union the ever edited and you were giving two tables and there are several conditions how the table should be joined, and then you were finally selecting from whatever your newly created data source was. However, in union what happens is you write two separate select statements. Okay, so you select from one table and you select from another table, and then you place those tables on top of each other. So no joining happens, the from clause is not edited, but here we have two separate select statements and you write two separate select statements, and the results of one statement would be displayed within the same table as the other, as they'll be joined together vertically, like on top of each other. Okay, but there are certain conditions to it. We'll get into that later. First, look at a visual way of how a union and inner join differ. So when you have union, as I said, that we would have the values append vertically, like on top of each other. So here, if you have in table 1, you have 1, 2, 3, and in table 2, you have 2, 3, 4. So when you're doing union, this entire thing would get on top of this. So it will come here and the result would be 1, 2, 3, 4, the IDs. Okay. So this entire table got on top of this, and this is what you got because 2 was repeated. So 2 was removed out of the result twice and only one time the 2 was printed. So here you saw that union, when union performed the operation, it happened on top of the other table. However, when we had join, you must be remembering that whenever we write join, we also have to write an on statement. And what does that on statement specify? So it specifies which conditions should the two tables or two columns follow so they can be connected together. Okay, so there is some condition for each join. Every time you create a join, there is some condition. You can say the teacher name is same, or the geography is the same, the country is same. You have to give some relation between those two tables, and on which only they can be joined. So if I give the condition that ID of this table is equal to the ID of this table, okay, and since they are getting joined horizontally, what will happen is all of the results, whatever we get from this table, would get appended here, in contrast to union where the results were getting appended at the bottom, right? So this got on top of this, or this got on in the bottom part of this, but we were getting top bottom approach, I mean the vertical way of appending. However, in inner joins, this would be here next to it, side by side. Now, and when we give the condition that ID of this should be equal to ID of this, you won't be getting 1 and 4, because there is nowhere where the ID 1 is equal to any ID in this table. When we go to 2, you would get that, okay, ID 2 was equal to ID 2 here. So that condition matches, hence those records would be joined together and included in the resultant query. Then again for 3, ID of this table matches the ID of this table. So these two would be appended horizontally next to each other and would be included in the results. Next, if you had 4 here, 4 is not matching with anything here, so we won't have 4 in our result. If anyone if any one of you who have listened to the previous lecture, can you tell me what will happen if instead of inner join I had, say, full outer join? What would have happened then? If any one of you can answer quickly, you can answer it. So you can give me what would happen for both of the tables. So what would the result be? Or else I'll share it. No answers? Okay, then I'll show you how it would get affected with each join. So let's say we had full outer join, okay? What full outer join does is that, okay, the rows where the condition is matching, they will be included. However, they will be concatenated, appended horizontally, joined, and then included here, which is the case with 2 and 3. So 2 and 3 match the condition here, and they are included with the joins, with the rows joined. In full outer, what the case was that we wanted all of the left out values as well, regardless of whether they could find a condition and they could join or not. So 1 and 4 would also be included. However, 1 would be included like this. So you have 2, 2, 3, 3 here. 1 would be included like 1 null, because there was no match for 1 in this table. However, since it's a full outer join and you need to include the left out portions as well, left out entries, so you will be including them, but since they did not match the condition and there is no match for them, there won't be any appending or joining happen, because SQL simply cannot find what is the match for that particular row. So it will happen 1 null. That's what the result will have. And since it's full outer, so the left out rows from both of the tables would be included. So for 4, you will have, for the first table, you will have null, because this is the ID from the first table. So as 4 cannot find its match in the first table and the condition is not getting satisfied, so it won't have any join or any match in the first table, so it will have null, which is the case for all of us, not finding joins, but that's for later. So we have null and then 4. When it's a full outer join, you will have 2, 2, 3, 3, which are satisfying the conditions, and you will also have those left out rows, but those rows will have empty null values in them, since they cannot find a join or a value to match with. So it will have 1 null and null 4 also. Now what will happen when we have a left join? So inner join is on your screen, and I explained how the outer join, the full outer join would work. What will happen when we have a left join? I'll give you 1 minute. If any one of you knows the answer, you can type it in the chat box, or I'll progress with explaining it myself. No one? No problem. You always have me. What left join does is, so it is similar to inner join, and it is also similar to the full outer join. How? So like any join, the left join will also include the values which are matching, or where the condition is getting satisfied, the on condition. So 2233 would be getting included in the results. However, what left join says is that include all of the left out rows in the left hand side column. Okay, so whichever rows have not been matched or they did not satisfy the condition, they would still be included in the result, only from the left side table. Okay, since it's a left join, so you'd only be getting it from the left side table. So what would it be? 2, 3 are anyway matched, 1 is left, so 1 would be included as under this column. It would be 1 since it's the column from the left hand side, and since it cannot find any match from the right hand side column, there was no match for it, that cell would be blank or null. Okay, and contrary, or the exact opposite of this, would be the right join. The right join will also have 2, 3, 2, 3, the values which satisfy the condition and can be mapped. But instead of the left table, the left out or the unmapped row entries which do not satisfy the condition would be included from the right hand side. So in right join, what will happen? We'll have the common intersection where the result is getting, the condition is getting satisfied, and the left out row entries or the unmapped, unmatched row entries from the right hand side table, which is the second table when writing the join. So from the right hand side table, 2, 3 are anyway matched, 4 is unmatched, so it has to be included since it's a right join. So how you will include it in the result is, under the first table you will write null. Why? Because the first column is the column from our first table. So since 4 cannot find any equivalent value matching in the first table, so it will have null here. And from the second table we'll have 4, since we need to include it as a part of the right join. All of this complexities, union is free from them, since union just stacks rows on top of one another. However, union also has certain limitations to it, or certain conditions under which only the union would be considered. Otherwise, the union won't work and simply would give you an error. Oh, thank you, Umesh and Subramaniam. I get you were present in the previous live stream as well, and I'm glad you answered it. Thank you so much for answering. So, yeah, what are the conditions while doing union? That's what we'll see. So the number of columns in both of the tables, or whatever you get from the select query, should be same. And why should it be same? Because otherwise, how would you stack columns on top of one another? For example, this one has 2 columns and this one only has 1 column. So how would they go on top of one another? There is no way to stack them, right? So whenever doing union of 2 queries or 2 tables, you need to make sure that the number of columns is same. Okay, and then the data types. So SQL treats one column, and everything in that column should be of a specific type. It can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a date, but everything has to follow the same type. It cannot be like you can store here names and then here you have numbers. No. Simply then the union won't be possible, since SQL wants the entire column to be of the same type. Okay. So in the same order, you should have the same data type. So if my first is number and second is date, the other table or select which I am trying to make union with should also have it in the same order. So when you are overlapping or stacking on top of the other table, the columns match each other. The column and their data type matches. There are two conditions which you need to take care of. That is, the number of columns are same and the data types, whatever they are, should be in the same order. Okay. And the second thing is that whenever you do an union, only the distinct values are appended and no repetitions are entertained. So for example, if there are some values already present in the first table, and when it is having a union with the second table, so those values which are common to both of them won't be included. Okay. It is already present as a part of the first table, so it won't be repeated again, and all of the rest values which are present in the second table, which are unique and which are not yet occurred in the first table, would be included. Okay. In case you don't want just the distinct values, but you also want all of the values, you have to use union all. So sometimes when we are practicing questions on these like code simulators, leet code, hackerrank, data lemur, what happens is you write something and you do a union and you feel okay, all of it is there, but most time what happens is it does not include the duplicate, and then your total calculation or your result goes wrong. That's why make sure you know what is union all and what is union. Union gives you only the distinct value, whereas union all gives you all of the values, even the repeated ones. I hope this was clear. If anyone has any doubt, feel free to put it in the chat box. I am looking at it repeatedly. Now let's get our hands on something, because as I have said earlier, and I will continue to, we always should be getting hands on with programming subjects and not just look at it and entertain it as some sort of theory thing. Okay, what is happening here? They are selecting everything from the crunch based investments part 1, and then they are making a union with crunch based investment part 2. They have selected everything, so hoping that the number of column and the data type of each column in the order which they occur is same, and hence the union is possible. What it will simply do is it will take all of the rows and all of the columns from this table and stack it on top of all of the rows and columns present on this table. Okay. In case we want to get all the duplicate values as well, you'd have to remove union and use union all, as we discussed. Let's take practice problem. So the problem here is, write a query that appends the two crunch-based investment datasets, which we just saw, these two datasets, above, including duplicate values. The second you hear including duplicate values, your brain should ring union all, since that's the only way to get duplicate values while performing a union. Filter the first data set to only companies with names that start with T. Okay, so now that we have a filter, we know what thing we need to do. We need to have the where clause and filter the second to companies with names starting with M. Okay, both non-case sensitive. Okay, this has a lot of parts to it. Only include the company permalink, company name and investor name columns. Okay. Okay, does anyone can make any wild guess about how many types of functions we'd be using here, like union all, join, where, or some other concepts which we have seen previously in this entire series? How many of them would we be using this? Because I am guessing a lot. Probably this question is the summary of everything we've done till now. So if anyone has any guesses, feel free to put it in the chat. And let's get ahead. It's a very interesting question. I'd recommend you scroll down to the practice problem section and practice it yourself because it's very interesting and I know you can do it because we have been working hard all this past week. I have shared the link where you'd get the practice problem. So please practice it. Yes, that is the right answer. Let's get started. So first of all, they have specified that they only need 3 columns, and since whatever we have learned from Union is that the number of columns and the data type of those columns is very important. So we'd be keeping an eye on that. So what all we need to select is, we need to select the company permalink, the company name and the investor name. That was what was specified in the question. From where? So from this. So now this will give us from the part 1, and we know that we need to have a union with part 2 with the same columns. Now we need to make sure that the number of columns and in the order which they occur is same, otherwise we'll be in trouble. So I'd copy the same thing again and just change the part 2 because I don't want to type it all over again and probably mess it all up. Now we have part 1 and we have part 2. We have been told that you select from 2 databases. So append. When we are appending on top of one another, we know that we need to use the union operator. Union operator. The next part of the question is including duplicate values. So whenever we have to include duplicate values instead of union, we'll be using union all. Okay. The next part of the question is you need to filter the first data set to only companies which have their name starting with the letter T. Okay. So what would we be using is, first of all, now that we have to filter, we know that we'll be using the where clause. The next thing is we know that we need to filter our company name, and the company name should be anything that starts with the letter T. Okay. So whenever you have a pattern or something uncertain which you don't know for definite, for sure, that okay, this is what I need to find. For example, if my company name was Tesla and I just wanted for Tesla, I would say company name equal to Tesla. Wherever the company name matches Tesla, you extract those results for me. But here Tesla is not specified. It could be anything that starts with T. Okay, so whenever there's this uncertainty involved that you don't know the exact value, okay, when you knew the exact value, if it was just Tesla, you could write equal to Tesla. When you know multiple exact values, like maybe it can be either Tesla or Microsoft or Google, you can use the in operator. You will use their company name in, and you will provide a list of whatever possible companies you want. The SQL editor would check whether your columns company name value matches or is a part of the list or not. Whenever it is, those values would be extracted. But in this case, it's not the case. So we don't have a definite value and neither do we have a definite set of value. For this uncertainty, we'd be using another very interesting concept in SQL, which is pattern matching. And it has been covered, I think, two lessons before this. So you can check the 3 lessons, yeah, before this, and it was the third part of the 15 days of SQL challenge. So you can check the playlist and make yourself familiar with it if you're not. What pattern matching does is it takes a pattern and then matches your company's, not your company's, your column's value with it. Now here my pattern is starting with T. How would I express that? First of all, since I have an outside string, I'd be using the quotes. And then again it has to start with T. Okay. After that, it can be anything. right? So I only thing that I'm sure of is that it starts with T. After that, what is there? I don't know. So when there's uncertainty in the length and what is the string, we use a wildcard percentage. What this percentage would do is it will replace any value. So it could be ESLA from Tesla, or it could be ONY from Tony. It would replace anything. It would just check whether the name starts with T or not, and anything can happen after that. Even so, just when it starts with T, no matter what it has after it, it will be selected, and this condition would be true. We have discussed in much more detail for that like pattern matching part, so you can check it. And whenever we are doing pattern matching, we don't have equal to, we use the operator like. You can check that video out and make yourself familiar with it. Similarly, for the second table, we also have to filter it, but we have to filter the second to companies that have their name starting with M. So same concept, but instead of T, we have M there. So we'll be filtering this table as well, where the company name would follow the pattern that it starts with M. Okay, till now the question is solved. The next part is both not case sensitive. Okay, so it cannot be case sensitive. During patterns, what happens is if I have written a capital T, okay, so it will select specifically that capital T. If there's a small t, it won't select it. To make sure that it includes both capital T and small t and isn't case sensitive, we can replace like with I like. Okay, so I like is case sensitive, is case insensitive, sorry. For both of the places, since we don't want it to be case sensitive, we will do I like, and I think that's it for this query. Let's see if it works. If any one of you had any alternate solutions to this, please feel free to let me know. Okay, it has been executed and we have gotten our results, the 3 columns which we wanted, and from both of the tables appended together. And for specific companies like Tokia, Tech, Trilliant, all of those companies which are starting with T for the table 1 and M for the table 2. Let's compare it with the answer given by Mode to see if we did right or not. I hope you're coding with me and coming up with your own solutions. Yeah, this is exactly the same thing as we did. Yep. Okay, let's move on to the next question. For a bit more of a challenge, write a query that shows 3 columns. The first indicate which dataset, part 1 or 2, the data comes from. Okay. The second shows company status, and the third is the number of investors. Okay. So, should we take this up or should we leave it for today and you've had enough for today? Because I was going to give you practice problems anyway, so I am glad that we already have something to practice with. If any one of you has any idea or some solution with which we can go ahead with this problem, do let me know. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Otherwise, I'll wait for a few seconds and I'll go ahead with what I think could be the solution. I'm not sure. This is the same link which I have given in the chat. So we're still there, we're still solving those questions. If you're done, then let's go ahead and solve it. So again, there's actually a lot to this. Let's take it one by one. So what we know is that we have to select something from our first table and we have to join it with something from our second table. That is all that we have assurance for that we have to select something, not sure what it is, from the first table and then union it. So they're not specified anything about duplicates. So let's keep it at the default one which we had been using. Keep it at union all. Next thing is what they want is they want specific name for both of the tables. So you have to show what is the table name. So I'll say this is part 1. Okay, part 1, and I will give a value, a hard coded value to the entire result. Whenever I write this string, and I'll say as, and then I'll say data set type or something. This would be my value for the column dataset type for all of the rows present in that particular table. So whenever you want to hard code a value, you can do so in the select statement. You can write a value and that value as some column. That column itself would have the value for all of the results that it prints. This would be the case for our second table as well, but instead of part 1, I'll have part 2 here, since I need to explicitly say what database it is, what data it is. So first indicates which data set, part 1 or 2. So I'm writing part 1 for the first data set, and part 2 for the second data set. I need to be very careful about what data set type I'm using in which order, since if there's any mismatch, there will be error while performing the union operation. So here dataset type is the first column, and here the dataset type is the first column as well. Next, what do we have is the second column shows company status. Okay. You have to use tutorial.crunchbase companies table as well as the investment table. You will want to group by status and dataset. Okay. Second, we'll have the company status. So the company status would. Did we have company status as a part of any of the data sets? Let me check. Select Z. Let's select everything from either of the columns and see that which column actually has the status part. Because I've not taken an overview of the data, so I am not sure where data is stored. So you can always have a look. Again, see, I did a wrong thing here. Since I just had to take an overview and not look at all of the data, I could have used the limit operation and fasten my query execution time. So we have company permalink, name, category code, country code, state code, region, city, permalink, investor name, category code, investor region, investor city, funding round, funded, raising amount, ID. I don't see status here. Do you see status anywhere? If you do, please let me know. Company. I don't think it has status anywhere. So okay, we'll be going ahead with performing that join, which it suggested us as the part of the solution. What it said was in the question that you would also have to use this data set, Crunchbase companies table, to get the investments. So let's use Crunchbase companies. Let's see if this table has the data that we're looking for as a part of the question. Permalink, name, homepage, category code, funding, status. That was what we were looking for. Okay. So we have the status, and I think we'll have a unique name, or the permalink, as Subramaniam suggested even yesterday, that permalink is the joining condition. Yeah, thanks for that, Subramaniam. I'm sorry I did not look at the chat. I Yeah, now so we have category from the company status from Crunchbase companies data set. What is the next part of the question is we want to have the third is the count of the number of investors. Okay, okay. So we need to have the count of the company's investors. Okay, let's look at the query first. Now, whenever we need to include two columns, we know that whenever we are using two tables and we have to join the rows horizontally, since I need to get for each company what is their status. So I need to include it horizontally as I would get for each company what is the corresponding status from the other table. And I cannot do it vertically on top of one another. That won't make any sense. And how would it even map it? So I'll have I and V for the alias for this one, or just I. Then I'll join it. And I'll join it with what? I'll join it with my tutorial.crunchbase companies. Tutorial.crunchbase companies. I'll give it the alias C. On what? So on I dot permalink, company permalink. I'll just go with name because I feel more comfortable with that. So company name equal to C dot name, since the company name is stored in the column name for the table companies. That would be my condition. Again, whenever it maps the company name from my investment table to the name of my company's table, it would include only those results. I will do the same for my second table, but I would give it a different name here since we already have I alias used. So I'll say I2, and here also I'll do I2. Okay, so we have the alias, we have the joining part. Do we have any conditions through which we can join? The company dataset, which the second shows company status. Okay, so company status we need to have. Company status would come from the column status in the table companies. So companies can be accessed by the alias C. We'll do C1, C2 since we have it different places. I1, I2. The two things cannot have the same alias. To save SQL of that confusion, let's give it different alias. So C1 is for the companies, and then I'll get the status for the first part companies. I'll get the status for the second part companies. Status, I'll give both of them a name so they can be concatenated together, appended together. Status. Okay, so second part of this is done. Now moving on to the third part. What the third part demands is it wants the count of the number of investors. Whenever we hear count, our brain goes to the second lecture of this series, which was aggregate function. So was it the second lecture though? I don't think it was. No, it was not. It was the fourth lecture. Okay. And how we do the join? Can we do count star, or should we include any particular column for which we need the count? I feel there's a very distinct column which we need, which is specified. Since we need the count of investors primarily, we should be using just those investors and not everything. So what we'll do is we'll perform the count, and we'll get the count of what? We'll get the count of investors. We'll say distinct, and we can only get whenever we are doing count of investors if a person is investing in my company twice. So it will have two row entries in my table. I only want the unique investors since people can only be unique. So I'll say distinct, and I'll use investor name column. You have a lot of investor data also. But from where? From my I1. So I1, and This would be for my I2 as well. Okay. And how do you need to group it by? So you need to group by, since you want per company, right? What they have said is, third is the number of investors. Number of investors against the company. That is, for each company, how many investors are there. So you need to aggregate again. Since I want to work on subgroups now, I need to aggregate by something. And aggregate by what? So I'd be aggregating it by the company. Or you can say that since it has set the percentage. Okay, the number of investors for each. So what it wants from us is, you want the part 1, what is the status and how many investors. So you'll do part 1 by each part, since it has two different values when you would be appending the data set as a result in the end. And then you'll have the second type, which is the status, by which you need to aggregate it further so you can get the unique count from each of those status. So 2, and then we'll do the same for this data set. I hope this works, or it'll throw an error. We will walk through it, no problem. I've not specified the alias properly. Yeah, let's hope this works. No, it did not. C dot name, C1 dot name. I wrote the alias name wrong. I defined a different alias and then used a different alias altogether. It's taking time, so I am assuming it's taking a lot of time, so I am assuming that the query is working. It's been a minute. Let me know if that is the case with everyone. We can check by then if that is the answer. Did it work? It did not. Now I feel that I did something wrong. It has taken. I don't. We have the investment part, company status, count distinct. Yeah, everything is pretty much similar, unless there's some error I did. Okay, maybe this is a huge query to process and it's taking a lot of time. But when compared with the solution which they have given, they just have bigger alias names. I chickened out a little bit there and I got lazy, wrote very small alias names. However, everything else I feel is pretty much the same thing. I don't know what I did wrong that it's taking so much time to execute, but maybe it's a complex query. So, in case you don't want to get stuck with situations like this, you should be joining me for a session for SQL query optimization, so your query runs in less time. Okay? For more of the things today, I have this excellent resource picked up. You can practice your union skills there. I have shared the link in the chat box. Oh, it is taking time. Thanks, Subramaniam. I thought I did something wrong. I have shared a link in the chat box. Oh, that link is, I think, is bigger than what the chat box can be. No problem. I'll comment it. This is the resource. You can just Google it and W3 resource SQL practice questions for Union. and you'll get the solution, you'll get the question. I would recommend you practice your queries there. So, yeah, it still did not get executed, but that's it for today. And let's talk it through till all of this gets executed. I'm pretty sure I did not do anything wrong, but maybe it's just the query being too complex. Tomorrow we'd be learning how, we write these single quotes, things included within single quotes and what it is, what they do. So how can you manipulate upon them? Since a lot of your data is of this type, it has words, characters, alphabets, and sentences. How can you process that data? How can you manipulate it, clean it, or change it to your liking? How would that work? That's what we'll be learning tomorrow. The live will start at the same time, that is 45 minutes before this time currently. I adjust it to whichever time zone you are from. For the Indian Standard Timing, it is 9 p.m. We'd be learning string functions. Learning this is one of the biggest step when doing data cleaning. Today itself at work, I had to spend so much time just manipulating strings to trying to get something out of it, clean the data. So string functions are pretty. Oh, it got succeeded. Okay, we have the results. We have the results, you guys, and it has worked and it has performed, and we have something for everything. Okay, just give us 8 rows, and for those 8 rows, we had to wait for 4 minutes and 42 seconds. But you have finally what you needed. You have the data set type and what is the status and how many investors have invested for each type of company status. You have it. I hope you understood what this was all about, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you for joining me in this session today. I hope I'll see you tomorrow for this session on string functions. If you have any doubt, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or this YouTube comment section. I would love to be a part of your journey. I hope this session was valuable and helpful. See you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.